Hi, this is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and this is Tuesday, September the 18th. This will be our chart lesson for today. It was just a really slow day. I don't know any other way to put it. There weren't a lot of entries. We just kind of chopped around. We really spent the entire day within a 5-point range. The lows around 50, highs around 55, so that's a a nice 5-point range. So there's enough money to, there's enough room to make money between the top and the bottom, but you just didn't get a lot of entries off the top or the bottom. Most of the time prices were stuck. And really we spent all afternoon from about noon, just before noon until 2:40 stuck in this 2 or 3 point range. So I got really frustrated in this and just finally said to heck with it and closed up and called it a day. It just wasn't worth messing with. And you got a couple of chances off the bottom. I'll go over each of the trades. It's going to be pretty quick today. Just not much happening, not much movement. And I'll say this was a really weird afternoon. Granted, you don't want to be going short down in here because it's really close to the lows. But even if you went high, they're just, you kept getting beat down. There was a failed breakout here, but it's really risky going short there. It's late in the day, and if you're still around, it would have worked. But even it wasn't a great setup. It's just too tight in here. But one thing I noticed was every time prices, starting right in about here, I was watching prices just to see what would happen. Every time prices would tick down here, they would bounce out of there really, really quickly. And nothing could close down there. So that was a good sign that we were definitely probably headed back to the upper side of the trend channel line or trend channel. Trading range, I guess is what I'm trying to say. This is not a channel, this is a trading range. So sorry about the mix up there. Don't want to confuse anybody. But let's go over the trades real quick, and then I'm going to wrap it up because I've had enough of this today. It's just been brutal sitting around here watching paint dry, basically. So, but the market opened coming down right here, and you actually could have shorted this coming down, but I didn't like that setup either. And you see how it really chopped all the way down here. The best bet was just to kind of wait and see what was going to happen. Then we made this double bottom and this little inside bar. So you could have gone short either when the prices broke above here or when they broke above this one. It was good for a scalp, nothing more, and then prices pulled back and it just got too choppy in here. Then we had this two-legged pullback with this little green bar here that gave, that was kind of bullish. So a break above it, and you had to be thinking we're probably coming up to test this high or this high. At least that's what I was thinking at the time. And we do have a little trend line coming up through here. Let me show you that. And this is a bounce off that trend line too. I guess I should have had that on there. And so this was a worthwhile setup. But then we made a new high. And remember, and this is definitely a trading range, Dan. You can see that. It's pretty obvious. And on trading range days, you want to fade every new high and every new low. And this is definitely a new high. It was a little risky because of all these overlapping bars, but we got that one tick failed higher. And so you got to be thinking we're probably at least coming back to test this trend line, and that's where we came before we bounced. And but now we're coming off the high side, so you got to be thinking you don't want to get trapped trying to bounce off, take a long off this trend line. And there was only really one setup right there, and you could have gotten trapped there. That was an easy trap, but that's the first entry long. Actually, there's a pullback when it started to go up, but it never broke higher there. Then it kept on down, and it finally broke higher there. So that's really only a first entry long. And then when it got ready to set up a second entry, it never triggered. So, and this is almost good enough to be a second entry short right here. So there's really not a good short setup other than this one right here. But if you did go short right there, if you saw that, it was a risky trade in my opinion, but it would have worked out. And then here's your first chance to bounce off the low, and notice that we got all these overlapping bars, and they're way away from the EMA. And at this, before this triggered and went up, EMA was probably way up here. So obviously it came on down as bars continued to make. But at the time of this, the EMA was probably way back here somewhere. And so whenever you get that overlap way away from the EMA, especially if it's at strong resistance or strong report, and that's or strong resistance or strong support, they're usually a good trade. And that's very similar to what we had up here. You notice we got a lot of overlap, but notice how we're way away from the EMA, and the EMA would have been down here. Actually, by the time this triggered, it was probably getting closer, but still, you got to figure prices are going to pull back right there. And you really want enough room between the entry point and the EMA to get out before prices get back there. But generally on those trades, if you need it, they'll probably shoot on through. But your best bet, and that's why this one is a little more suspect because of all the overlapping bars, and there wasn't a whole lot of room to scalp out before you got back to the EMA. But it was a failed break higher again, or a new high on a trading range type day, so it was worth the risk. And same thing here. We've already got a low here. I actually bought this blindly, and it bounced nicely. It did pull back. Sorry about that. I had an interruption. The phone was ringing. I had to answer that one. I can't remember where we were. I think we were talking about this trade. And then we had a double bottom here with that one tick lower, and it raced higher. And again, it was a little risky because you had to enter so far up here. But you notice if you tried to drop a limit order on back down here, you would not have gotten filled. And I really thought prices were going to race on up to the top here. And that's probably what everybody else thought, but there was really only just enough room. And there was enough room to scalp out, and you had just enough ticks to scalp out. And that's why I always tell you to make sure there's enough room to scalp out before you get to the high, because you see what happened here. If you entered above that bar, let's just look at this. If you entered above that bar one tick, you got in at 51.50, and you notice it had just enough room to get your 5 ticks to get out. So if you'd had to enter one tick higher, you would have entered at 51.75, and you would have had a 4-tick failure, and you wouldn't have got out. So that's why I'm always telling you, when you enter these trades, you usually want to have enough room before you get to the last high, or if you're coming down before you get to the next low, to scalp out. Otherwise, you may get trapped in there and get burned. And there was just enough room here. And it's amazing how many times that comes into play. And here's probably a good example on this. If you tried to enter on this little failed break, your entry point is 51.75, and look where it went to, 52.75, and then turned down and made everybody think it was going to go lower again, and then it went higher. So it still would have worked out, but you would have had to ride out this pullback, and that was really dangerous because we didn't know that we may not make another leg down from here, right there, similar to that leg right there. And so anyway, the point is, make sure on most entries, unless the market is really trending strongly, make sure there's enough room to scalp out before you get to the last high. And when you entered here, the last high was right here. So you needed at least 5 ticks above your entry level. If not, you had to try to slip in a tick or 2 back. And of course, you didn't have to do that on this one. But again, I just bought this one blindly, so I was out before we ever got back to the EMA. But I don't teach that. I don't recommend you doing that until you really get good at the price action, at reading the price action, because too many people will get, do the wrong thing and get burned. And so you really need confirmation ahead of time in most cases. There's give and takes to both. A lot of times by sneaking in here early, even if this would have ticked higher and turned down, I would have had enough room to get out. So you have that benefit that you'll sneak in and sneak out a lot of times when prices are just not going in your direction. So there's pros and cons to doing it both ways, but my personal opinion is until you're a very experienced trader at reading a chart and reading the price action, you're better off to wait on confirmation of the signal with a trend bar in your direction. So you could have actually entered above this one or this one. And there are a bunch of overlapping bars, but remember, this is a trading range day. And when you see that overlap near support of the range, and it's prices are way away from the CMA, that's generally a good trade. So anyway, I'm going to wrap it up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 trades, and really if you were waiting on the key entry points, there were really only a couple of trades today, so there just wasn't much happening. And if you got stuck in this, it was brutally painful, and I was just painful watching it. And again, it just was really odd. It's like, and you see how prices are racing higher here after the close, which you normally don't get much movement. So something's up. Just the way this market was unwilling to sell off. Nobody really wanted to buy it. It's like they were waiting on some of the news that was coming out. There was some late afternoon news. I don't know how important the news was, to be honest. But this price action's odd here. And to me, nobody, they weren't willing to buy the market yet. Oh, the chart went nuts there. But at the same time, anytime they tried to sell it and it broke lower, it instantly bounced. It was just really funny watching these bars, how prices would be about to close on the very low, and at the last second, they'd jump 2 or 3 ticks and close on the high. And I mean, it takes some strong buying to do that. So to me, something just looked odd about this price action right in here. And really from about this point onward, so from about almost 2 o'clock onward, I don't know how to describe it other than what I just told you, but just something was odd about it. And now you see we're heading higher well after the markets closed and reopened at 3:30, when normally we don't get any movement in this time. So not sure what that means, but we'll find out as we watch the price action, and we'll see what happens tomorrow as well. So, but I'm going to wrap it up. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.